Our meeting today is in three parts.
Welcome to our community meeting. Please help yourself to your refreshments. Many of you probably have already done that. You'll find information on each Elkhart County Superfund site displayed around the room. We also have a petition for your consideration asking the EPA to offer testing for residents living next to the Conn-Selmer site. Feel free to take some time to look all over this before we begin. If you should need them, the restrooms located on this floor, just go outside the doors and then turn right. Go past the drinking fountains and turn right again. We are providing Spanish translation for our meeting today. For this reason, please bear with us as we work from a script for the benefit of our translator. We are asking that everyone in need of translation sit in the area in front of the TV. We will begin shortly again. Welcome and thank you for coming.
Now, while we've allowed for a translation area, because we're really encouraging the Hispanic community in Elkhart to have access to this information, we weren't sure if anyone would show up today, but we are recording it. So there'll be a little bit of translation back noise. Please bear with us because we're recording that and we'll be making that available on the ECEC website. So even if there's no one here physically hearing the translation, it's still valuable that we're recording it so that that community will have access to the information. So thank you for coming. And for those listening online, welcome. This is our agenda for today's meeting. Following introductions, we will proceed in three phases. First 35 minutes.
The first 35 minutes will be spent providing a brief overview of the 7 Superfund sites in Elkhart County and why Elkhart County Environmental Council was formed to address residential exposure to migrating pollution plume. More detailed information for each site is available on our ECEC website. There is not enough time in the day to cover all of our questions, but we will have time at the end for a brief Q&A. We will also have a contact form on our website where you can submit additional questions for us to address. Today, we provide an overview of conditions in Elkhart and how ECEC hopes to serve the community to address residents' needs.
During the second phase of the meeting, there's a break in between, which is partly making the point that ECEC is an activist group, but our study is academic with a collaboration. So we're gonna have a break. And in the second phase of the meeting, we'll describe our project. We actively include local residents. Go ahead.
Which takes us to the final 20 minutes of our meeting. Before we go public with the survey, we want to get you to give us feedback regarding the questions we have prepared, how they are worded, and if there's anything that we missed. We will go through each question. You may have insights about how to word our questions better so that people will be more inclined to answer them and engage with the study. If so, please speak up. You may also have additional questions you think we should add. If so, please speak up. This is our study, something we are doing together for the greater good.
That's our methodology. It's called a community engagement strategy. So that's why at our first meeting, we want your input on how we actually shape the sentences on the community survey. So let's introduce ourselves. My name is Sherry Steiner. I have a PhD in environmental sociology and I work at Purdue University, Fort Wayne. I'm Professor Emerita. I'm the principal investigator. Direct any questions or concerns about this project to me at smsteinE@pfw.edu. You'll see it on the handouts.
My name is Mark Dademan. I'm the founder and current president of the Elkhart County Environmental Council. I'm an environmental advocate and represent the community partner for this project.
Dr. Saw Liu, can you read your hand? Right here. She's associate professor in the College of Health and Human Sciences at the main campus of Purdue University. She's an exposure scientist. Dr. Liu will be overseeing the water and indoor air testing and analysis.
Our grant involves scientific testing.
We forgot about introducing
Oh, I'm sorry.
Elise. Yeah, I forgot to add that. I apologize.
Yeah.
Elise, are you here? Elise is our IRB specialist, and she's the research coordinator with Purdue University. She makes sure we stay on track with honoring your rights and making sure that we practice with best practices.
Doing an entry something
Yeah, so,
that you're.
involves scientific testing, but there's also an educational component. That's your
Okay.
number 4.
Yeah. The grant that involves improving environmental literacy in the community and educating students about community engagement, participatory research, and civics. We have 2 students with us today, Veronica Johnson. She's doing our Facebook Live over here. And then Veronica has a BA double major in sociology and history from Purdue University of Fort Wayne. She just graduated and is in the process of applying to graduate school in urban sociology and community engagement. Veronica will be helping us tell your stories.
The other 2 students are Maria del Pilar Martinez. She's a Spanish major at PFW, Maria. And she's our interpreter. She's been carrying heavy load. We've interpreted everything into Spanish because of Maria. And Cassie Power, who is a biology major, environmental exposure. Cassie, you can see it's very interdisciplinary. Biology, sociology, history, Spanish.
So let us begin the first portion of our time together, environmental conditions in Elkhart. There are 7 national priority list Superfund contamination sites in Elkhart County. 6 of them are in Elkhart City and 1 is in Goshen. Posters for each site can be found on display around the room, and most of you guys have had a chance to do that.
In Elkhart City, there's 5 groundwater contamination sites that impact city and some residential wells. The areas in town with fence signs that say groundwater protection area does not mean that the area is fenced off to keep clean groundwater clean. Rather, it's fenced off because it was determined that the groundwater on the other side of the fence supplies public drinking water, and the EPA assessed those areas for contamination, and it was determined that the areas needed to be fenced off to prevent high-risk activities from further contaminating the water. So it is not recommended that people jump the fence and fish on those areas, because it does not mean that the water is clean. So jumping the fence to fish in those areas is not recommended.
We've kind of seen that at Hemco when we were driving around town, so it does happen. As we look into the details of each Superfund site, you will learn that several of the Superfund sites have pollution plumes in the groundwater that are migrating into residential areas. If we had thick layers of clay in our area, that might not be very alarming. Tap into city water and let the pollution plume move on its way. The layer of clay would block fumes from coming to the surface, but that is not what we have in Elkhart. The soil in our area is rather porous, which means the fumes from the pollution come up through the soil and enter the buildings that are built on top of polluted groundwater. This has already been happening. Remember when the Elkhart Clinic was shut down a few times. No, I'm still going. The point source of that contamination was never identified, but the fumes were coming from underground, permeating to the surface and entering the clinic, which made some people sick. That is why they had to close it down twice. And it is IDEM that told them to install a vapor intrusion mitigation system in its main building before opening up again. The room had filled with volatile organic compounds, also known as VOX. Now the mitigation system is addressing the situation. The clinic is fully operational and considered safe.
Residential exposure to VOX, that's how we'll refer to them, volatile organic compounds, is the focus of the sampling part of our project. The EPA says that at several of the Superfund sites, there's not enough information to determine if human exposure to VOX is controlled. It's important to note that the EPA says that their maps of residential exposure are conservative estimates so that they don't overly favor a best case scenario. The EPA wants to ensure that potential threats to public health are never missed or underestimated. That said, as we work through information about the Superfund sites, you will learn that on at least 2 occasions, it was residents conducting tests on their own property that subsequently resulted in designating the location the Superfund site. Gathering data can make a difference, it already has. We're here to help ensure that gathering data continues to be beneficial to the community. Even tests that come out clean provide important information that allows people to breathe a sigh of relief. Here are maps indicating the location of the 7 Superfund sites in Elkhart County. Goshen, right here, you see Crescent, Wilkinson, and then
Yeah, so
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
so they're separated because down here in Goshen would be the Superfund site in Goshen. The Goshen Municipal Well Field site is just north of West Pike Street and North Main Street in Goshen, otherwise known as US 33. The other 6 Superfund sites are located throughout Elkhart, as you can see.
We're going to begin with the Goshen one at first North 5th Street.
Then Conrail Yard, Hemco Dump, Lane Street groundwater site, North Shore Drive, Lusher Street, and North Main Street Wellfield.
So we begin with Goshen. The groundwater pollution plume at North 5th covers 15.1 acres. Fluorinated chemicals were first identified in the groundwater in 1993. The site became an EPA Superfund in 2020. IDEM, Indiana Department of Environmental Management, has identified more than 67 facilities that may have contributed to this pollution. The site is in the remedial investigation phase of the Superfund process. And in one of the upcoming newsletters that EC does, they will explain what that means in terms of how the EPA has different processes. EPA is currently sampling 30 residential water wells at no cost to the owners to get more information about the pollution plume. Contaminants of concern are VOX and dioxide.
The EPA has determined that they do not know enough yet to be able to conclude that human exposures are controlled. They are still trying to figure this one out. When we checked the census tract cancer rates, we found that a census tract 302, where this site is located, has an elevated cancer rate of 13.2 compared to the national average of 9.0. However, correlation does not mean causation, so that's kind of an important thing to remember. Just because the elevated cancer rate coincides with a consensus tract location of the North Street Superfund site, we cannot conclude that the cancers are caused by pollution exposure from the site. If you live in Goshen, we encourage you to look at the map on the poster to see contamination radius and the well sampling locations.
Conrail Rail Yard is an active site. And by the way, we also have taped on the table behind the entrance there, maps and the EPA contact, who you would reach out to. So if you want to get a closer look there, it also says, here's who you call. And the different ones all have different EPA people. So you got to know who to call.
If you need any help with that, get in touch with one of us and we'll make sure that you get connected with the right person.
Conrail Rail Yard is an active site. Up to 74 trains enter, leave, or pass through the yard every day, handling an average of 3,200 freight cars. Conrail Rail Yard is 4 miles long and is the third largest rail yard in the entire United States. The Superfund site additionally includes a former drag strip and other areas of contamination. In total, the entire site covers 2,500 acres. Responsible parties took action to protect human health and the environment under state and federal oversight. The site is currently in the long-term remedial action and monitoring stage of the EPA.
A groundwater pollution plume has been migrating from this Superfund site into the nearby residential area. If you live near the rail yard, take a closer look at the poster to see if the map pollution plume is near where you live. Potential avenues of exposure to residents are through consuming contaminated groundwater from private wells or inhaling the chemical solvents if venting indoors. The majority of the residents within the Superfund site have been hooked up to 4 city water, but there are a few outliers that have rejected the offer. Contaminants of concern are volatile organic compounds, in particular trichloroethylene, which is also known as TCE, and carbon tetrachloride, CC14. Both of these chemicals are classified as carcinogens.
Now to HIMCO. HIMCO Waste-to-Waste Services Inc. began operating the dump as an unlicensed landfill in 1960. They accepted household refuse, construction rubble, medical waste, and calcium sulfate. A lot of stuff from Bayer, the Bayer building. Much of the waste was disposed of in a 4-acre construction debris area. HIMCO closed the landfill in 1976 and covered it with about a foot of sand overlaying a layer of calcium sulfate. In 1990, HIMCO was added to the Superfund list. The site covers 60 acres. The list of contaminants of concern in the groundwater is quite long, but the EPA says that human exposure to contaminants of concern are now under control. Physical construction of cleanup activities is considered complete, and the site is now ready for anticipated use. In 2022, HIMCO Dump underwent a partial delisting. Groundwater monitoring and regulatory reviews are ongoing.
The EPA offered all residents living next to the site free hookup to the city water. However, a few rejected the offer and remain on private water wells. Although EPA considers the site now under control, some residents, including new homeowners that have not been informed about the condition of their private well at the time of sale, have expressed to us that they are concerned about the migration of pollution into their private water wells and of soil vapors into their homes located near to the dump. If this is the case, we need to gather evidence to bring it to the attention of the EPA.
Now Lane Street. Lane Street Superfund site is an example of how residents gathering evidence can make a difference. A local resident read in the media that Ida was testing groundwater near GeoCell as part of a voluntary remediation project. She decided to test her own private well and found it was contaminated with TCE. She notified IDEM, and they sampled numerous drinking water wells along Lane Street. They discovered very high levels of TCE that appeared to be unrelated to the geocell project. In 2007 and 2008, IDEM and EPA provided water filters to about 13 homes, and they hooked up 26 residential properties to the public water supply. In 2009, Lane Street groundwater was added to the Superfund list. Following legal action in 2023, furniture manufacturer Flex Steel Industries agreed to a consent decree to pay $9.8 million to fund site cleanup and reimburse past agency costs. The Lane Street groundwater site is classified by EPA as an active Superfund site with ongoing cleanup and remediation design.
Box, which are volatile organic compounds, as a reminder, are among the contaminants of concern at the site. Although the risk and pathways addressed by the cleanup are focused on people ingesting or touching groundwater contaminants, some residents near the site have contacted ECEC saying that their whole family was ill and that they were wondering if vapors might be intruding into their homes from polluted groundwater. If this is the case, we need to gather evidence to bring to the attention of the EPA. The EPA classifies exposure to VOX as a possible human carcinogen. Breathing in high levels can cause headaches, dizziness, lightheadedness, and passing out. Long-term exposure has been linked to potential injury to kidney and liver. If you see something, say something. We are not here to scare people, but we are here to gather any evidence that might merit further investigation.
North Shore Drive is yet another example of what can happen when a resident who sees something says something. In 1996, a concerned citizen contacted Indiana Department of Environmental Management with complaints of skin irritation caused by water drawn from a private residential well. IDEM found evidence of VOX in select heavy metals.
The site was added to the EPA Superfund site list in 2014. The site covers 70 acres and impacts 47 residences and a few commercial establishments. Since 2017, EPA has collected numerous samples, including from several residential wells. The origin of these contaminants is yet to be determined. 5 EPA has entered the feasibility study phase of the Superfund cleanup process, whereby they evaluate potential alternatives to clean up the groundwater. Maps of the pollution plume can be seen on the North Shore Drive poster.
In the case of Lusher Street, the "if you see something, say something" trigger came from a private musical instrument manufacturing company, Gemeinhart Manufacturing. And some of you may even be close to the Gemeinhart plume because they have their own plume. They were cleaning up after themselves when they found contaminants in their stuff that wasn't associated with what they do. So they reached out to IDEM, EPA, and VOX were found that seemed disconnected from their operations. Contaminants, including VOX, were found to impact about 870 acres. The site was added to the Superfund list in 2008, and although the sources of contamination have not yet been fully identified, a group of companies that are potentially responsible for the contamination, referred to as the Lusher Site Remediation Group, have filed lawsuits to successfully recover some of the remediation costs.
Lusher Street is classified in the remediation investigation phase with the EPA. To protect people from exposure to contaminated groundwater and vapor intrusion, about 49 properties are being connected to city water and vapor intrusion mitigation systems are being installed in about 198 homes and buildings located within the area of concern. If your home lies within the vapor intrusion area of concern, you may be able to obtain a free vapor mitigation system as a precautionary from the EPA. And I think they might have possibly downgraded that to just testing. We just looked that up, I think the other night. So that's one point of clarification, that you would want to check the EPA site on that. Maps of the site boundaries are on the Lusher Street poster. If you live within the Lusher Street boundary, contact Alyssa Graveline about installing a free vapor mitigation system at your property at graveline.alyssa@epa.gov. A few months ago, ECEC went door to door in the impacted residential areas to bring this EPA offering to residents' attention. Many of the people we spoke with were unaware that this was being offered. ECEC coordinated initial point of contact between residents and Alyssa Graveline to initiate follow-up to resolve residents' concerns. If you read the Goshen News article, there was a bit of confusion. We now are issuing news releases to reduce this from happening again. Point of clarification, we, as an ECEC, are not the ones offering free vapor mitigation systems. But if you live in the impacted Lusher Street residential zone, the EPA offers free vapor mitigation systems. ECEC does not provide vapor mitigation systems under any conditions. And just one point of clarification, we went out to the site yesterday. So some of the plumes kind of originate in this area and they work their way up. So if anyone can kind of see this is the railroads coming this way. And just kind of a point of concern that I'd like to bring to people's attention is that the two residents that are in the largest concentrations of TCE moving upward both have vapor mitigation systems. One is properly using theirs, and the other, because their financial system, have disconnected their vapor mitigation system. So despite the fact of living in that area and being provided the free vapor mitigation system from the EPA, they shut that off because they could not afford the energy cost. So even when you're hooked up, there are concerns that some of these neighbors don't understand the gravity of what they're breathing, and what the EPA is actually trying to offer.
The other thing is, the EPA has these deadlines for what they're offering. And sometimes what they've been communicating with Mark isn't yet fully updated on the website. So I went with what was on the website, saying, well, you know, maybe there's a little bit of grace here. So that's why you have to talk to them, because they've got a budget, they have, you know, but you've experienced with them that a lot of them are willing to work with people.
Yeah, Alyssa kind of, even if it's not updated, you would still want to reach out to Alyssa. She seemed fairly flexible with the deadline. So I don't want to say that they for sure won't. It's still worth a conversation. And even if they themselves can't directly provide that, they may have some other programs that can provide some levels of assistance in that. So.
Yes.
Does the Lusher Avenue site and the Conrail site border each other?
No, they are very close, although Conrail's further to the west.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
There's some separation there.
The Main Street Wellfield Superfund site consists of 15 wells on 10 acres of land in Elkhart. The largest of the 3 well fields are owned by the city. The site supplies about 70% of Elkhart's public drinking water. Bogs were found in the groundwater in 1981. The likely source is from nearby industrial operations. The site became a Superfund in 1983. Under EPA oversight, the site's potentially responsible parties installed a groundwater extraction system, an air stripper system, and a soil vapor extraction system which cleaned up the site in 2000. Site's currently in the EPA operation and maintenance phase. Following cleanup, groundwater monitoring has been ongoing.
In 2001, Elkhart City reimagined the site, allowing residents to enjoy outdoor recreational amenities. They added biking, jogging, and walking trails to the Superfund site for general public use. The western portion was enhanced by construction of the Wellfield Botanical Gardens. Flower gardens, fish ponds, and artwork work should not mask the important need for ongoing monitoring of the groundwater to ensure continued delivery of safe drinking water to local residents. In December of 2025, the EPA indicated that the on-site businesses that employed 20 people were working under conditions that exposed them to the vapor intrusion. The remedy was deemed not protective of human health and the environment because of vapor intrusion at 2 commercial buildings. This raises the question as to whether or not dilution is the solution. That's kind of a method for Elkhart. They try and use as much clean water to dilute some of the chemicals to satisfy the parts per billion expectations set by the EPA.
Yeah, coming in as an outsider to Elkhart, if I didn't know the data that I know, the place is so quaint and it seems very industrious and there's not abandoned homes and you've got a vibrant community that's very positive and upbeat. A lot of redevelopment going on. But it's one thing to have redevelopment in open air, open gardens. It's another thing to have enclosed buildings with redevelopment, given the sand and the way that pollution can come up through the ground. And that's one of the issues that ECEC wants to make sure that the public is aware of. So the I'm lost here. I got something came in. Thanks. So as mentioned briefly earlier, there are short-term and long-term risks with exposure to VOX. Short-term exposure health impacts include eye, nose, throat irritation, headaches, nausea, and dizziness.
Long-term exposure includes liver damage, kidney damage, increased cancer risk, neurological inflammation and disorders, cognitive decline, depression, and anxiety. If you are experiencing any of these symptoms, the correlation of your symptoms does not mean that VOX are causing these symptoms. However, if you are having these symptoms, conditions in Elkhart are such that you might want to consider testing your drinking water or indoor air for the presence of VOX for the extra peace of mind. IDEM
and EPA primarily focus on industrial site contamination and cleanup. And yet it was residents expressing their concerns that resulted in establishment of 2 of the 7 Superfund sites. Residents have concerns, but where can they go to obtain trustworthy information that takes their concerns seriously? Who will listen to them, connect them to contacts at the EPA, and then advocate on their behalf? Enough is known about migrating pollution plumes in Elkhart and Goshen to establish the need for a nonprofit that prioritizes residents' concerns.
In 2025, I founded the Elkhart County Environmental Council to publicly advocate for residents in Elkhart County, not just the city. We focus on empowering residents to address public health contamination concerns. We champion human dignity and promote our common responsibility to develop collaborative solutions that make a lasting difference to improve community well-being. Our motto is get informed, be empowered, together improve.
If what we have said about conditions in Elkhart motivate you to take action, There are several things you can do today to connect yourselves to others who want to improve the community.
At the table, we have a petition asking EPA to test box in residential homes near the CG Con 1101 East Beardsley Avenue. We are collecting signatures to deliver to the community request to test for vapor intrusion to the EPA. The more signatures there are on the petition, the more weight the petition carries.
And I really encourage you to sign that because I know we have some people here who live near that and it would benefit them. We're here today. It would benefit them if we came together and asked for this type of testing for that big part of town.
She's got a question.
I just have a question. They're doing testing and some kind of treatment there now. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. So Roberts Environmental is conducting some of the testing, sampling. They were out at the monitoring wells the other day, testing those and just getting levels. So I believe it was back in 2025 where the city reached out to the EPA to help address some of the shallow and deep level lead levels that were found on the site. So far the EPA has come out and they have just cleaned up the shallow levels
Soil.
of the soil. And now it's going to be, I'm not sure who's responsible for the next phase, but they are going to be working on TCE or tetrachloroethylene. That was the other contaminant of concern at the site. And then the EPA will then come back in again to do the deep level lead removal. The shallow lead removal is considered kind of an emergency status from the EPA, and that's why they were activated at that time due to the classification of it being more under an emergency status.
And remember, they're focused on cleaning up the site, not necessarily the migraine pollution limit.
I see. So the petition would be for the migraine.
Yes, it's for off-site exposure, particularly in residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, it would be anyone maybe on the perimeter that could be within the path of the plume, just to make sure that their levels are within the residential limits. Again, just to provide peace of mind, there's no assertions that anyone along the perimeter would be positive. It's just more, all these people around the site. So it just seems pretty reasonable. Some of the pollution maps kind of go off site and begin to go into the neighborhood. So the fair enough is just, if you have a home and you have plumes of contamination below you, you didn't cause that as a residential homeowner.
Right.
It was caused by someone else. So due to the fact that was kind of unbeknownst to you, just as a safety precaution, it just removes all doubt that you would be able to feel safe there. And even if there were a positive test result, just as a reminder, the vapor mitigation systems can be installed. So it's not really a death sentence of when you live there, you're just kind of stuck with it and there's no options. There are options. Sometimes the EPA offers that. And if they don't, I think, there are costs associated with it, but there are higher costs if you ignore that with a positive test result and allow the long-term exposures. You would have health costs that would far exceed the vapor mitigation system.
Can that testing be done even though the petition's not been?
So the petition would be that the EPA take that over as far as their scope for that, and that the free testing that we'll be mentioning a little bit later, that it wouldn't come from our supply because we're trying to go over to every site within the county. So since the EPA kind of has had some involvement in there may be other sites that we want to use our test for that the EPA is not covering. So it would just be a way to kind of spread the funding a little bit so that that doesn't interfere with some of the other sites that we would like to have tested.
But remember, in two of these occasions, it was residents testing it themselves, that then resulted in the designation or the awareness.
One of the neighbors within that neighborhood, their home had tested with elevated levels in the indoor air. It was in the basement. Sub-slab would probably be less of a concern, but indoor air means if you do go to the basement, there would be some level of exposure, even if it's minor. So anytime you have TCE, your level of exposure to TCE should be 5 or less. So if you ever see any of the plume maps that we kind of talk about and you start seeing 20, 50, 300, 1,000, and they can get higher than that. That's where you would start to have some significant concerns if you live above that.
If you live near 308 North Fifth Street in Goshen, here's a map of the contaminated area, and this is the EPA contact. Again, these are also taped on the table back there. If you live near Lusher in Elkhart, here's a map of the contaminated area. And we just keep moving through these real quickly, is that all right?
Sure.
We'll just keep moving through these. And again, these are taped on the table back there. And if you live near Walter Piano vapor intrusion area, ask EPA to sample your indoor air.
Yeah, we were out there yesterday for some unrelated things within the neighborhood. And while speaking to some of the neighbors, I believe that the EPA does their best efforts to get the word out, and they use flyers. Sometimes they'll canvass the area. But what we notice is there's a language barrier. There's a lot of Spanish speaking residents. So if they don't have a translator, if the EPA has not brought a translator on site to do the translating, that can present a problem. Also, one of the people that I spoke with yesterday said that they didn't believe that they had it, and if they had it, they probably would have thrown it away because they figured that it didn't pertain to them. So especially in the Hispanic community, I think there's at times a disregard. If they don't have a perception of it being important, they'll just throw it away and disregard it. And we obviously want everyone to have equal access to that and not have one population disenfranchised over the other.
Walter Piano is not one of the 7 Superfund sites, so you won't see it on the poster, but it is an area that the EPA has active offerings.
And they are doing some different processes to remediate that site right now.
So Main Street wellfield vapor intrusion is the yellowish orange area highlighted here. So you can see that it's right up against the Walter Piano.
Yeah, so the blue would be Walter Piano, and kind of the other comment that I would make mention. So here's Walter Piano, where the building once stood. It has been demolished. And if you drive past on Beardsley, you'll notice they have a bunch of white pipes sticking out of there. And then there's like a train car to the side. That's the EPA doing their work to help remediate the site. It's an injection process where they inject a chemical into the ground. And then the hope is that the plumes that have been migrating into the Crawford area neighborhoods, I believe, well, and so maybe could help explain that better, but it kind of has a behavior of trying to bring that plume back towards the site to minimize the exposure to the neighborhood. So that's the process the EPA is working on to kind of help with the impacts to the residential neighborhood. It's also important that the flow is kind of coming this way, and you can't see it on the slide, but some of this is coming down here, and over here is where the St. Joe River is. The city of Elkhart filed. Yeah, the city of Elkhart filed for a grant in which they would receive assistance to manage this. And they did that with their concerns that the plume was moving to the St. Joe River, so to protect the water, body of water there.
And if you notice that the EPA contact person on this side of the street is different than the EPA contact person on this side. of the street.
Can you back up a slide?
You want me to get that?
Can you go back to
Forward.
yep, to the blue and the yellow, yep. So it's important to know that this is kind of an addendum of what would have been the original site. So you can kind of see, this is Edwardsburg Avenue coming down here. And then this is the train yard. So most people in Elkhart kind of know this area as our Wellfield Botanical Garden. It's a very beautiful garden to kind of walk through. I believe it was the city, when the EPA was remediating the site, took over and wanted to create a recreational opportunity for the citizens to use because of the nature of the site. So it is important to know North Main new, North Main old, and all that information will be available at the EPA website with five-year reviews. So there may be some distinguishing factors from here and over here that are completely different because it's kind of, it's the same site, but kind of its own thing, so to speak.
As an environmental sociologist, I encourage you to come together as a community. Please get connected and stay engaged.
If you have reached out to any of the EPA contacts and they have not responded to you or you have 7 not satisfied with a response, please reach out to ECEC. We have been able to help people in the past. For example, emails were lost in spam folders, and we're able to help address the situation. So some of the people reaching out for either the free testing or the vapor mitigation systems, their emails at the EPA are just going to the spam folder. So if at any point in time you feel like there's a lack of communication, it would be nice for you to reach out to us. We will loop you into an email with those EPA contacts so that we can ensure that they take over the case and then begin to help you from that point on, as I would consider them educated people to kind of resolve your conflicts and can provide resources.
So this concludes the first portion of the meeting. Let's take a short 5-minute break. The restrooms are right outside the door and opportunity to get more refreshments. And we'll begin, we'll call you back in a few minutes. Thank you.
There's over here that there's some paper over here that not
Stretcher, they go there.
walked around.
Oh, she may well. You're from the Elkhart Group?
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta come over and say hello.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Your people are up there. Very nice.
Oh, very good, yeah. That's-
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Yeah, when was the council board?
So back in 2025, we started the Facebook group.
Chairman has
And
been.
I had, prior to that, been involved. This was actually sections. Reached out.
I sent somebody something about our office. Because his
So they
first
introduced
visit
me to the.
there's been fiscal year.
I would make a note and send it.
Mentioning that it would be nice to
Council
get some.
station, his wife. and I went
Or
over.
they were willing to do this, they'd like to work.
Okay, very good.
It's really convenient, you just
Yeah,
take
yeah.
the stuff,
Going.
get off at the University of Chicago.
Uh-huh.
9 to 9, kind of call him out, but Jesus, the council person. Maybe after the meeting.
Okay, we,
Kinda
have,
section about it.
15 minutes left, so we want to keep on time. So let's begin this next portion of our meeting. Our research project is funded by the Community Engaged Alliance. Their objective is to create a vibrant, engaged community that supports and promotes institutions of higher education in Indiana that are leveraging their knowledge, resources, and power for the public good. Their motto is empowering minds, transforming communities. Our grant is part of their Scholar Practitioner program. For this reason, you see students, researchers, and community leaders partnering together to educate students, link Purdue to the Elkhart community, and use Purdue resources to help you better understand residential exposure to migrating pollution plumes. I'm the primary investigator, so as we get going, again, if you have questions regarding the project, I can be emailed at smsteine@fw.edu.
The project title is Enhancing Student Learning by Building Cultural Capacity and Increasing Environmental Health Literacy in Elkhart, Indiana. Already, ECEC has become stronger as a result of participating in this partnership. Strengthening ECEC builds cultural capacity in Elkhart County. The first part of our meeting today is part of our project school of increasing environmental health literacy in Elkhart through community education. Maria and Veronica's contributions today enhances their education at Purdue. To ensure that all participants in our study are protected by proper protocols, our study has been fully reviewed and approved by Purdue University's Institutional Review Board, IRB number 2026-0198.
Another way we increase environmental health literacy is by providing trustworthy information to the community. Purdue and ECEC have partnered with the Senior Policy and Legal Director at Hoosier Environmental Council, the most reputable statewide environmental nonprofit in Indiana, to do a 12-part series in the ECEC newsletter focused on the Superfund sites and the EPA process.
Beginning in the fall, the 12-part series will kick off with an explanation of how EPA Superfund process works. After that, each newsletter will provide a detailed and trustworthy in-depth account of each Superfund site in Elkhart County. Each newsletter will be posted on our website on a designated page for each Superfund. So I might also mention in kind of this archived newsletter for different events like this community meeting, we'll try and create a space just a little bit separate so it's more clearly defined and not just kind of placed in just the general newsletter area.
Another component of our project is storytelling. Stories should be focused on pollution exposure and public health. Participants will have a Zoom session that records you as you tell your story to one of our team members. All names and identifiers are removed from the final write-up. Once the story is completed, the video recording is deleted.
Select resident stories will be sent in our ECEC newsletter and posted on the ECEC website. Do you have a story to tell? If so, please scan this QR code and let us know of your interest.